and circumstances offered us a chance to host a reading by Louis Warsh, we jumped and said yes. Mr. Warsh is a significant figure in the history of American letters as a teacher, editor, publisher, and writer of smart, moving, and entertaining poetry and prose. His most recent book of poetry, he's also a collage artist, and the cover is a collage by Mr. Warsh. His most recent book of poetry, Inseparable, Poems 1995 to 2005, published by Granary, is a collection of work that charms. While the external world's in a state of flux and the internal world houses doubts, the poems seem settled with all of that, aware and gracefully, wistfully settled. Now in contrast, his most recent book of prose, A Place in the Sun, published by Spuyten Duyvil, I'm going to say.
Right.
Oh. I'll just retire now. It is an utterly compulsive, hard-boiled bit of interweaving lives, most commonly sharing sex and violence. It's a merciless avant pulp book told from several perspectives, which delightfully requires the hand to turn page after page and the eye to take it all in. It is truly a pleasure for us to ask you to join us in welcoming Louis Warsh. Short introduction.
Thank you, John and Christine, for asking me to come here. And Dorothea. What is the line from your poem, I am all pronouns, yes? Is that the Ted Berrigan line? That's his line,
yeah.
yes. So John mentioned this novel, A Place in the Sun, and in the center of this novel is an investigation of this movie, A Place in the Sun, which I'm sure some of you have seen. It came out in 1951, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift, and based on an American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser. And I saw this movie when I was really young and had no clue what it was about, but it somehow haunted me, and I saw it then again when I was older and realized I'd better do something about it and write something about it. So I read all these cheesy bios of Liz Taylor and some better ones of Monty Clift. And the book is about many other people as well, as John said, and their lives sort of intertwined tangentially. But the thread, I think, running through the book is everybody's confused about their sexual identity. Monty Clift was this gay man in Hollywood in 1950 and was promoted by day as the most eligible bachelor in Hollywood, and at night had his kind of hidden life going on. And everybody else in the book is also confused about such things. Monty inevitably and eventually lived a very troubled life because of that. So the section I'm going to read, which is just a few pages, has nothing to do with the movie. It's one of the sections that is sort of working on its own, and it's called Secret. I tell people my secrets in the hope that they'll tell me theirs. People think I'm an attentive listener, but the only reason I talk to them is to use what they say in my writing. I ask them about the first time they fell in love or went to bed with someone. I ask them about their diseases, their addictions. I get them to tell me things they never told anyone else. I once hired a hitman to kill my mother, she says, but it all fell through at the last minute. I slept with my shrink, she says. I never told anyone this before. Maybe you'll recognize yourself in some of my stories, maybe not. Maybe everybody's stories are the same. Teeth. Everyone has problems with their teeth, but these aren't the stories I'm interested in. root canals, periodontal work. I had an affair with my dentist, she says. I never told anyone this before. She was the last patient of the day, and he locked the door of his office behind him. There was a couch in a room behind his office, away from the bright lights and the x-ray machines and the plastic gloves. She had the feeling that she wasn't the first patient he had seduced. I leaned over the arm of the couch, and he lifted my skirt, she said. Sometimes people tell you more than you want to know. I had simply asked if she could recommend a dentist, and this is what she told me. The affair with her dentist lasted 3 years. After he finished work on her teeth, they began meeting twice a week at a hotel near his office. They met during his lunch hour, and eventually he left his wife and children. But we never lived together, she said. I wanted to ask why, but I had already heard too much. I was taking Tylenol with codeine for the pain in my tooth, and I was conscious of our thighs touching as we sat side by side in the booth in the back of the bar. It was closing time. I could imagine walking her home, climbing the stairs to her apartment, and making love to her without taking off my clothes. But then I remembered my wife waiting at home, waiting up for me in our bed, reading a book, and I didn't want to walk through the door with a secret of my own. She was reading one of the long later novels by Henry James, The Wings of the Dove, I think. She was on page 320. My wife likes to talk about the books she's reading, and I was familiar with The Wings of the Dove. I'd read it in college, but I'd forgotten the story, so hearing my wife talking about it was like rereading it, and I know I'll never have time to reread it. What I read as I get older, what I tend to enjoy reading, are biographies, life stories of people who overcame adversity, who performed heroic deeds under the worst circumstances, exile and imprisonment. I recently read a biography of Chairman Mao, which had mostly to do with his sex life. Apparently at all state functions, there was a room where Mao could go for a rest, accompanied by 2 or 3 of his favorite consorts. I also read a biography of Bertolt Brecht, which claimed that Brecht didn't write any of his major plays, that he had a group of women, his lovers, who wrote the plays, Elizabeth Hauptmann, Ruth Eisler. There were others as well. Brecht always had 2 or 3 girlfriends at the same time. It seems odd to me that we remember Brecht's name, but we don't remember the names of his collaborators, that he didn't even give these women credit for their work, that he cheated them out of royalties, that he never wrote a good play after they grew bitter and stopped working for him. They were in love with him, and that's what inspired them to do his work, and let him sign his name to the work they had written. They thought he would love them more. But he jilted them all instead. I get into bed beside my wife and rest my head on the pillows while she continues to read. My wife and I have been married for 15 years, and sometimes we read aloud to one another before going to sleep. The main secret of our marriage is that she had an affair with another woman, which lasted 5 years, and that half that time we lived separately from one another. But we're well past the point where we talk about that anymore, though for a long time, even after the affair ended, it was our main topic of conversation. How's your tooth? My wife asks. It hurts, I say. I'm going to the dentist tomorrow. And then she says, let me read this to you. I close my eyes and listen to the voice that begins and ends every one of my days, surrendering to the convoluted hum of sentences with no boundaries, until my own thoughts are a blur of clouds and shadows on the distant horizon. Memories, secrets, all my fantasies, everything fades in the hypnotic sway of my wife's voice, until all that remains is the dull pain in the side of my mouth. So it goes on. Fiction, it's fiction. So I'm going to read some new poems. I guess I'm not going to read from the book of poems, but that book is called Inseparable, and it's poems from 1995 to 2005, so they're already seemingly all ancient. And so I'm going to read poems written since then.
Put that to our advantage because it's dropping.
Okay. The milk was sour. The milk was sour, but I drank it anyway. You must check the expiration date on the container before you buy it. I spilled a container of sour milk into the sink. The strawberries are moldy. I only bought them yesterday. It's pointless to ruin your life over love for another person. You can always go back to the store and get a refund. I ran out into the rain and went to the store for a container of milk. It's not necessary to wear clothing when you go to the store. No one in the store notices whether you're wearing clothing or not. For some animals, the ritual pattern of courtship is a dance of death. Wet streets, the entrance to the bridge, the windows of stores selling diamonds. Go back to where you started and repeat everything you said. Once I stood where Mao stood and stared down at Tiananmen Square, and once the wind blew me backwards off the Great Wall. Every poem is going to include a reference to Mao, I guess. The survey. The survey is in. Let's add up all the numbers. Now that we know how everyone feels, we can make a fresh start. Sometimes there's a big contrast between old and new. You react to something in the past by going to the opposite extreme. You make up for your mistakes by going in another direction. It could be that the new is the same as the old, but at least for a while, it seems different. Soon enough, the new becomes the old, and the guy in the outdoor restaurant under the palm trees with his back to the ocean is singing a song by the Eagles while the waitress brings us a plate of mahi-mahi, and some girls in hula skirts begin dancing on a stage, and someone throws a tomahawk into the side of my head, which is why I look strange, talk strange, and are having what's known in some circles as a bad hair day, but which for me is just business as usual. This is called Dear Communard. The satisfaction of human needs creates new needs, Marx said, just as a poem gives birth to another almost immediately after you finish the one before. So there's no sense of completion, and only an occasional word crossed out, deleted. No completion seems to be the order of the day. Something left out calls for its other. A warm bed is all one needs. And the new poem is calling, but the operator is asleep, and the words are lost and found again. That's the other theme. The ghosts of the past enter stage center. The animals and the street people line up on the boardwalk. The ocean looms, scatterbrained birds of a feather fly south for the winter. The deletions add up. The Hotel de Ville burns to the ground. One wing of the Louvre is gone. A mural by Delacroix turns to ash. The poem needs some sustenance, but no one can give enough. That's what I was like when I was younger, insatiable in my own way, so that people thought me strange for wanting more than I had. But the mystery is in the words, never enough. I might have worn them on my sleeve. So what do you say we get down on our knees and pray for some God of forgiveness to man the barricades? Or do we take it as it is, as it goes, while remaining cognizant of what happened down through time, all the thens and theres mingling with all the I's and U's, until a direct address is delivered to all of Paris on the day that 100,000 Prussians did a victory lap down les Champs-Élysées, and it all really happened. Dear Communard.